have any
We're starting in a minute.
for
He's gonna give you a countdown.
I was
There will be a
blinded
video.
by the opportunity
you, and then you
to
start.
be there. I came to seize the chance to get into some place unique where
Sandra,
only people like me exist. Well, I came from a different country, and the fact that I can combine my own culture with the culture that I see around me, with the architecture, the nature, and
maybe there was
the
an issue with your microphone.
I'm surrounded
we should start in a minute.
Is what creates art, in my opinion. It's a circle of its own. I have this mindset, I have this idea, the inspiration that I can do something.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We are here today with Professor Sandra Hoplik-Mosberg. Sorry for mispronouncing your surname again. Today, she will give us an introduction about space, habitats, and habitability. She's a researcher and a professor in TU Vienna in Austria, and she's also collaborating with NASA and other agencies that are related to space organization and sending astronauts in orbit. So welcome here. Sandra, stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Martina, for the kind introduction. I'm happy to be with you, and I will give you an overview today about habitability in extreme environment. If you have any questions, I'm also happy if you interrupt me at any time, and I'm looking forward to discuss the issues that are of interest to you.
Thank you very much. Let's see how responsive our students will be.
Okay. Currently, we have 2 space stations in orbit. They are circling Earth with a distance of just 400 kilometers. So closer to each of us than we are to each other. The International Space Station is the largest space architecture that was constructed out of Earth. And we have the Chinese space station Tiangong that is also permanently crewed for some years now. So they are space stations, space habitats are in an environment that is called extreme. And extreme environments there is a classification for that is settings for which humans are not naturally suited. And because of that, special solutions are demanded. And when we look at different extreme environments on Earth, we can see that living beings, animals, but also humans and their respective culture have developed their own strategies in order to cope with the specifics of that environment. And the question of if and what we as architects and designers, I've learned you're industrial designers, can do to achieve a better living and working place, that has been my personal starting point and is still my research goal. So any system design necessarily involves unique design elements, and that are very often in response to the environmental setting. So each threat or extreme environmental characteristic leads therefore to a number of unique engineering and design requirements. So by observing the commonalities and differences, we can learn a lot for our future planning processes in both environments on Earth and in space. One of the critical characteristics for living and working in extreme environments is the extraordinary dependency on the habitat. Actually, there is no surviving, no living quality without habitat and its technological capability, as well as its socio-spatial framing. When we talk about habitation in extreme environments, we are also automatically talking about a complex and interconnected system. And we have some components. In order to simplify it, first is the environmental setting, in which the habitat is situated. And then we have the technological and engineering mechanics that are required in order that humans can survive or humans can use the habitat. And last but not least, time is a substantial influencer. The longer the mission lasts, the more important the design and the capability of the habitat is. So there are many definitions for the term habitability from different professions, from different cultures. And without going into too much detail here, I understand habitability as an umbrella term that describes the suitability and the quality of a built habitat for its inhabitants in a specific environment. So now let's start to talk a bit about space architecture and its challenges. From a technical and engineering point of view, one of the critical characteristics is the habitat and its technological capabilities. This is an image of a spacesuit, and the spacesuit illustrates the basic principle of a habitat. The minimal habitat, if you want to say so, that keeps a human alive and that makes the activities or prepares the human for the activities necessary. So space is a vacuum, the moon is a vacuum, and the Martian atmosphere has an unbreathable carbon dioxide. Therefore, all space habitats are constructed as pressure vessels. Of course, they need technology in order to control the temperature, as you can see here, and communication. We also need water and energy. Basically, there is no human mission without a habitat and without a technical subsystem. Actually, without a lot of technical subsystems. So you all may have seen science fiction movies or architectural design projects for living off Earth like this. This example is a very old one from the 70s. It's from the film Space Odyssey 2001. This is another one, a very famous scenario, the Stanford Torus, which was a scenario for a space colony for 10,000 people. Unfortunately, today, this is the reality, and an image of astronauts traveling in a Russian Soyuz, very cramped, small, packed, full. And that's the first unbendable fact about the logistics of space travel and habitation. Everything is limited. Space is limited, storage is limited, air is limited, water, food, power, everything, even people. Which brings us to the first design challenge. Everything related to space development takes a very long time in comparison to Earth, and a lot of different people to design, test, evaluate, and launch habitats to space. It is said that more than 100 different space stations have been designed, prototypes have been built before eventually the International Space Station was realized. On the left, you see two former space station designs from famous industrial companies, from Boeing, and on the top left, you see, can you see my mouse? Oh, here. On the top left, you see this is a habitation module that was designed and discarded. Over the time, eventually all unnecessary, let's say so-called unnecessary things would or were discarded. The habitation module was too costly and discarded. And here you can see a circular connection. This was also discarded. And still, today we have the International Space Station on orbit, and it's still a very remarkable piece of architecture. This is an overview that shows the space stations in orbit over time. Actually, all space stations and all space habitats that have been realized, built, and inhabited insofar You can see that in the 70s there were also 2 or 3 space stations at the same time in orbit as it is today. And the next design challenge is also associated with time, but in a different way. It's concept versus reality. So very often space stations do not look like how they have been designed. On the left, you see the Sayut, a section through the Sayut 6 space station. It has color codes for each area. So red is work, blue, here's the sleeping area, green is the food area, and yellow are the toilet and hygiene equipment. In the middle is an image of the Sayut 6. Here you see the shower, which is to be deployed, but in this case is not. And on the right, you see a famous, fantastic drawing by Galina Balashova. Galina Balashova was the first female space architect, and she designed the Russian and Mir space stations. But as you can see, those two images look totally different. So this is not the past, and is still happening. On this side, you also see 2 images, and these images are from the same module, all almost from the same perspective. You can see the connecting point here to the next space station. It's a view of the Destiny laboratory, left in 2001 and on the right in 2020. And you can see that when it was designed and brought up and not used yet, it looked very spacious, very clean, very attractive, very orderly. And on the right, you see how the space station looks today. You know these images from the internet and from the televisions. So you can see 2 things here. One is that life cycle, it's very important to include a life cycle into the habitat, as on Earth, but in space it's crucial. And the second thing is you have to think how the habitat is going to be used. Then the second thing that you see here also is we as space architects understand or try to understand the psychological dynamics of living in small and confined spaces. And it is very important how space is perceived, especially in a small volume. On the right, you see a lot of cluttering, a lot of things everywhere, and chaotic probably. And such an environment can be perceived as crowded. And crowdedness is a term used in environmental psychology and is directly related to behavioral aspects, which is of course also a cultural thing. But automatically, if you perceive a space as crowded, it feels much smaller than it is actually, and it creates a sense of loneliness and disorientation. Another design challenge, as you can imagine, is how to fit it in. So we talked about size and crowdedness. Now this is also the design challenge because we can only take certain things with us that fits in the rocket. There is a famous saying that Mercury astronauts, that's from the 70s, did not climb into the spacecraft, as you could imagine, what is shown on this picture. It was said they put it on. It was also the era when the term man in a can was born, illustrating that it was really a very little space available for the astronauts. And it also led to the selection characteristics in that astronauts had also a height limit. You could not become an astronaut if you exceeded a height of 180. That is why the early or older astronauts are all not tall. It was an advantage to be of small stature. Here you can see the system. You see the system that traveled to the moon with the Saturn V. The whole Saturn V is it's huge. So far, the hugest rocket to be built. And only this tiny little bit on top, the command module, came back from the moon. The 3 stages that you see here were only used for fuel and systems. So this illustrates how much volume, how much weight you need in order to get something off Earth. The only large space station that has been built so far used this rocket, which is interesting because as it did not go to the moon, the second stage that you see here was not needed. So they refurbished the second stage into an orbital space station. Thus had a much bigger diameter than just the top, as you can see here. It had a 6.6 meter diameter, and was called the Skylab space stations. Later, another possibility to create larger space stations, because you cannot bring larger volumes from space, from Earth to space, is you create modular space stations. That means you launch different modules and connect it on orbit. So Mir, the Soviet Mir space station, was the first modular space station, and today the International Space Station is also a modular space station. Also, what is interesting, you can see that with this International Space Station, some kind of standardization was introduced, and it was the rack system. So here you have 4 racks along the sides. On each side and in the middle is free. At least theoretically, it should be free. We have seen images. You can also see on that one that there is still a lot of equipment in this so-called habitable space. But the good thing is that the racks can be exchanged and thus prolong the lifetime of the International Space Stations, because experiments and interior can be changed. So in terms of how to get it in, my favorite story is related to the Lunar Rover project. You can see an image of the lunar lander and the lunar rover. Does anybody know here how the lunar rover arrived on the moon? How was it delivered? It was delivered during Apollo 15, and Harrison Smith is telling us now how the lunar rover got to the moon. Harrison Schmidt was the last astronaut on the moon so far. And here you can see how it actually landed on the moon. Also here it is worth to say that a lot of lunar rovers had been designed, but eventually the lunar rover was discarded by Werner von Braun, the lead from NASA, and this engineer asked him if there is a space for a lunar rover, and Werner von Braun told him that there is some small bay that is not used, and he told them, if you can build a rover that fits into this triangular bay, we can take it. I think this is one of the most genius engineering solutions. And from examples of that, we can also learn a lot for living on Earth and how to use small space more efficient. Another way that is related to foldable mechanism is more recent, is the development of inflatables. So the idea is to launch something that is compact, and then at the desired point, you deflate it, you inflate it in order to have a large volume. This is the image of a module that was sent to the International Space Station and tested, and it was successfully tested and is still docked. So now for the lunar-based designs, upcoming lunar-based and also Martian designs, the idea of using inflatable modules is very important. You can see here, this is an inflatable space habitat, and here also the same idea. This would be the diameter that is launched, brought to the lunar destination, and on the lunar it is deflated, so it becomes more large. In addition, it will be covered with regolith. Regolith is lunar soil in order to protect the habitat from radiation and from micrometeorites. That is a very important thought, because we have learned that it is very limited what you can bring from Earth in terms of weight and volume. So for a lunar Martian habitat, you want to make use of as much as possible of what is already there. So right now, there are a lot of designers are working on solutions, how to bring, it's called hybrid methods, how to take advantage of the things you can bring from Earth, or you have to bring from Earth, and to what you can use on the site. Which is the next design challenge, what to bring, because as you can imagine, what to bring is quite a design challenge, because what you bring is what you have, and if you don't bring it, you don't have it. That means you have to make do without, and that concerns every item, and that concerns space and also crew. You cannot bring everything, and you have to make a very good pre-planning and considerations of what to bring on one hand side, and because you cannot take everything you eventually may need, space is limited, volume is limited, you have to be very careful on the design of those things. So every item should be multi-purpose, flexible, repurpose, and should be able to reconfigure it. There is an interesting example that you can look up in the internet, let me show you the video of Apollo 13 that illustrates what you take is what you have. So a filter was broken during the Apollo 13 mission, and they would have died. The astronauts, unfortunately, the filters that they had did not fit the lunar module. Okay, that's the key message. So you can only use what is there, and they did not have the filter that would fit. But they had to find a solution, and as you know, it worked. They found a solution, and this relates to the next beautiful thing, that we as humans are creative. And it relates also to a famous saying from Buckminster Fuller, the architect: waste is, where he says, waste is the resources we are not harvesting. So basically, everything is a resource in space. Everything shall be considered to be used, and not only once, but multi-purpose. So the next design challenge is the building site. One does not trust Newton's law, as one astronaut says, leads us directly to the fun part and the challenging part, microgravity. In space, you can use uh, all spaces, all surfaces. There is no up and down. You can see here on the right, during the Kibo installment, it was when there were no racks installed, so a huge free volume. Astronauts immediately tried to use it. You have to know that weightlessness changes everything. It changes the physiology of the body, because fluids don't are accumulated through the whole body, and you have a lot of physical issues, health issues related to it. For example, muscles are decreasing, calcium is not produced anymore in the extent that you need it on Earth. So a lot of psychological, physiological changes to the body, but at the same time, it has some effects for us designers, for us architects, because we can consider the whole volume, which is interesting because here's a fly through to the Skylab space station, the largest space station ever, at least the module. You remember I told you, and it was also an experimental module. They experimented a lot how people would behave or deal with this microgravity. And you can see that here is they developed, for example, some shoes with some restraints that would be connected to the floors and ceilings everywhere, you can see. And at the end, it was experienced that those are not needed, so they are not used today anymore. But at that time, they did not know, because it was the first time they would experience microgravity. So in terms of architecture, everything needs to be rethought from an activity point of view. I've done some research related to the activities to the built environment. And again, here you can see the two drawings. On the left is a normal position. It's called the neutral body position on Earth, that needs little muscle strength. And on the right, you have the similar body position when you are relaxed and you don't use your muscles, but looks totally different. And you can see, for example, the line of sight changes totally. So you can imagine that for the design of workstations, this is quite important. And this is also relevant for all other human activities. For example, here you see 6 different solutions from sleep. He's talking about the sleeping in the shuttle. Here you see the sleeping station of the Mir. It had a window outside, and this is the sleeping station of the internet. So all solutions, let's say, for human activities have developed and changed with the development of the space stations. The same is true for the toilets and showers. You can see here shower system on Sayut, and also the Mir had a shower system that you saw on the previous image, and the Skylab. So in total, 3 shower systems have been developed, but none of them did work very well because it was hard to use them. As we talked about it, microgravity conditions, water does not run down, so the feeling of having a shower is quite different. And so astronauts did not like to use it, also because they had to clean it before they went out. Only the Mir astronauts used their shower system as a sauna, which eventually worked in the sense that they got clean and got relaxed during that. But today, wet wipes are used by the astronauts. Living together is a very large challenge on Earth. Some of you have experienced that. Also in the last years, we have had harder challenges, all of us. And you can see that these here are some astronauts on the ISS. You note maybe that it looks quite challenging to put all the astronauts on one image because the space is so small. So living with others is not easy in the best of circumstances here on Earth. But if you remove the opportunity to get away, to go outside in a small space, it can be a huge challenge. So the architectural design challenge is to provide clearly defined personal spaces, as well as to have the ability to control it. And of course, we also need social spaces. And this is actually, again, where habitability comes in, because this is a module that relates the interrelated factors between the inhabitants and the built and lived in environment. It is important to include both physiological as well as psychological needs of the individual as well as of the group. And as architecture is connected to human factors and habitability, everything we do has consequences. So for the people that live there and also for their relationships. So personal and social space has been mentioned several times already as critical elements. It is very important for long-term missions, not so much for little times. A personal retreat allows also for individual personalization. And it's a little bit of a retreat for a demanding working environment. So it says it was a little bit cramped. We had to sleep in small spaces. It was a little bit like camping. And of course, for 8 days on board the ISS, you can for sure do that. But for extended stays on the moon, and if we move further into space, it is very important to have this personal space. And it is, at the same time, it's also very important to have a room where you can do things that you don't want others to listen to, that you don't want others to see, for your psychological health. This is very important. Also, what is needed is social places that are crucial for the crew in order to be successful together for a mission and in order not to withdraw from the cruise. So social places have to provide opportunities for people to connect and to bond and of course to engage. in meaningful ways, other than working reasons. The last design challenge that I would like to mention is windows, because it has always been an issue, and you remember that everything is limited. We have to think what to include and what to bring. So this is a picture of cosmonaut Poyakov. He spent 40 months on Mir quite some time ago, but he was the first one, and much of the time he spent there alone. And loneliness is also an issue on Earth, of course, but in order to create an environment, we have to think as designers and architects how we can make use of a space that is limited, and what we can do with the environments. If we cannot increase the space, the volume, what can we do in order to improve the behavioral health? And one example is the integration of windows. Windows are needed for functional reasons, and the design and integration of a window is a very good example how you can combine aspects of habitability with aspects of functionality. The engineering requirements, the environmental constraints, and the human behavior issues. Today, since the famous discussion of the inclusion of windows from the Skylab space stations, luckily windows and window analogs have been recognized as effective architectural elements, and they are functional benefits in ICES and space habitats. You can see here a short overview that since the beginning, windows were only used when necessary in order to not to sacrifice the structure, but still what astronauts have always done is to look out of the windows, to look at Earth, to look at things happening outside, and also to have a feeling of expanding their inner space to the outside. Apollo astronauts, for example, had the shutters never closed. Also, there was a protection needed from radiation, but they reasoned that with the marvelous view of the lunar surface, of course, and also they had a marvelous view of our planet Earth. So a window is functional, it is a pleasure activity, and it can even serve as a sales argument, as you can see here on the right. So a window seat can be quite something, and there is ample evidence that windows, but also surrogates, virtual windows, serve critical functions for human psychological health and well-being. However, I would like to draw your attention that it's also very important to relate to the site and where you're building, because this is an interesting lesson that we have learned for the integration of habitat design. It's not enough to simply add what we need, but we have also to think how it is used. And here we come back to the relationship between human activities and the technical challenges. On the left, you can see two astronauts at a window in the International Space Station. There was in 2004 a leak noticed, meaning it was losing air, oxygen, and for quite some time the engineers and mission planners on Earth did not know what was the reason or where was it coming from. And it turned out that it was because of this window. There was a hose. It's an Earth viewing window, an optical window, and there is a hose that helps to have a vacuum between the window shades in order to look out very clearly. And here you can see an astronaut using handles But at the time when the leak was detected, there was no handhold. So astronauts would rapidly hold on, you can see here, because there was no handhold, they would just hold on to what was there. And that was the hose. And after some time, the hose got loose. And so it resulted in this leaky hose. So in our extensive exploration of the gaps in habitability needs, and we've also looked at terrestrial facilities, we have found out that there are habitability issues that are overarching, meaning we can learn something from looking at extreme environments in space. And these here are some of them. So for example, we can maximize habitable volume simple with the perception of space. We can design, or we have to design sequences in multi directions in order to have a more spacious perceived environment. We can use color, lighting, texture, and geometry in order to increase space. And of course, we can use technical necessities like windows, but also greenhouses that we have not talked today, and digital displays in order to create a more spacious and a more habitable habitat. So after all, referring to one of my co-authors, after all, it's not how large you make it, it's how you make it large. And this is the end of my talk. If you're interested in more information related to that, here are two, I would like to refer you to our YouTube channels, lot of interesting talks related to space architecture. Also, our publications are online. And these are 3 books of mine and 1 children's book that you may want to look at if you're interested. And I would also like to draw your attention to our upcoming excursion to Houston. We go to Houston within our MBA program for 1 week, and we offer a few places to non-MBA students if you are interested in that. Thank you very much, and I am very happy to answer your questions, please, or hear your comments.
Okay, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I mean, it doesn't happen every day to think about the possibility that are out there for architects and designers to design something so unconventional as spaceship. So most of the interior designers here will probably think about making a restaurant or a hotel, nothing something in the space, nothing something even related to a place that is so extreme in terms of inhabitability. But anyway, that's part of future for sure. I guess we have to work more in that direction. Just to break the ice, because I know that my students are very shy, I will ask the first question. Hopefully they can start thinking about something to ask you. What's the team made up from? I mean, I know that for sure there are lots of engineers. I know that you're working in very straight, close relationship with astronauts that are then your users. So you're working with them because they have to try, they have to see things. But which kind of professional figures are there?
What do you mean with professional figures?
Like architects, designers. I mean,
oh,
I know there are specialized architects and designers, but still, let's say a team is made up by how many engineers, how many of you?
Oh, it's thank you very much for this question, because this is very inherent, because space architecture is interdisciplinary. Right now, there are little architects, little designers, little human factors engineers, researchers. It's mainly engineering driven, because it's such a hard, challenging, and demanding environment. But now that we move towards long-term missions to the moon, space, a lot more architects and designers are invited, and it is a very fast-growing field. You can see a lot of startups in Europe, the US, or you can see, for example, moon missions, Chinese, Indian, not only US, European. Everybody wants to go to the moon because this is the future. Not only because it's interesting to do research there, but also it's a technological advancement. That is why our MBA course, for example, at the TU Wien is so interesting, because it combines these new technologies. It combines Earth and space also.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Any question? I know you're shy. Try your best. It's not really conventional to hear these things. This could be maybe your future work. In 5 years from now, they are almost all first and second year students. So zero.
You can ask me any question that you that is in your mind. Don't worry, there is no question that is too small. I'm very happy to talk with you. I would like to know who of you has thought of designing something for space, for example.
In order to ask questions, you should come here so she can hear you. Come on, you can make it. Okay, first of all, thank you for winning the shyness. You're on the camera.
Hello. So maybe it is a really basic question, but we will be studying on interior architecture. So it's really interesting topic for us too. So of course, a couple of them probably wants to design a space machine or something. So we really do this as an interior designer because it's a lot of mathematics, a lot of physics in here. So we're not education like this. So it's hard to answer. So we need extra education for the space for design something like this.
Oh, you would be a perfect fit for designs for extraterrestrial habitats. A lot has to be done for the interior. So I think it's a very good course in order to learn the basics, for example, use of colors, the effect of colors, where to put it. And it's even more interesting because Galina Balashova, for example, the space architect that designed the Russian space station, she introduced a color system in order to help the astronauts orient themselves. So she would give colors to different walls so they would know where is up and where is down, because there's no up and down. And sleeping quarters, for example, is a wonderful task for an interior designer.
Thank you.
So I think it's if you're interested in that, it's really worth moving forward, because it is still a very open field and it's fast growing. And especially for young people, there is a lot of space for you to contribute.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So as a, let's say, field growing very fastly and is interdisciplinary. So of course there will be engineers that are doing all the physics and all the math, but they know anything about how to use the colors to provide a kind of psychological benefit for these people that may be spending a lot of time alone, provide privacy. I mean, without taking anything away from the engineers, but probably you can have your 5 minutes to breathe instead of getting, always with the crew, because that's one of the issues you were showing, for instance. Which kind of fields, maybe from nowadays, at the beginning of your presentation, you were showing the deserts, you were showing the Antarctic, can be used as, let's say, case studies, or even as trials to simulate these extreme conditions? Maybe more for the interior life than exterior life, because we know the situation is not the same outside of Earth. Is there anything that can, stimulate your creativity or help you that is already on Earth as a situation?
Yeah, related to interior design, it becomes crucial when you cannot go outside, right? The layout of the habitat is very important, because we can learn a lot, or in the book Space Habitats and Habitability, we analyze the space habitats, but we also analyze the research stations in the Antarctic and Arctic, where also you cannot go outside so easily. And maybe you remember from COVID that if you cannot go outside, you're stuck with a few people in a limited space. Even if it's larger, it's still limited, and it has not everything what you need there. My opinion is that architecture and design can make your life better. And if you learn that as an interior designer, I think you can do it in every other project on Earth. Because when you understand how humans use a space, then of course you can find a very good solution for whatever task you are hired for.
Yeah, that's hopefully the goal of all our colleagues, and also about the fact that we are living in a city that are densely inhabited. We are also living our daily life in smaller houses. So we are going through somehow the same issues, maybe in another scale, but of course we have a beginning there. Any other question from this very shy audience? No. Okay, so apparently there are no other questions. They are all very, very shy. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here with us today. I hope we can rearrange something soon, maybe even in person. That would be great to have you here in North Cyprus.
That would be lovely. And if you need input on a design with your confined environments or urban environments, I think it would be interesting to discuss that and compare the issues.
Yeah, definitely we can arrange something. We are just losing the connection a bit, so I lost your few last words. I think we can finish the webinar here. Thank you very much again, and let's stay in touch. Meet you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.